In the early morning hours in July 1975, three masked men approached a man about to enter a Hindu temple and shot him in the head. This was the first shot of the Sri Lankan civil war. It happened here, just at the gates of the Mahavishnu temple in Ponalai, just on the outskirts of the city of Jaffna in northern Sri Lanka. The victim was Alfred Doraipa, the then mayor of Jaffna. The killer was no other than Velupai Prabhakaran, the man who would later go on to found the LTTE. The story of the assassination is well known. But what fascinates me is something that no one seems to have paid attention to or bothered to mention. That Alfred Doraipa was a Tamil Christian man who regularly worshipped at a Hindu temple. How could he actually even do that? What social, cultural, and devotional imaginations permitted such spiritual transgress? As I read about Doraipa, I think about those in South Asian history who refused to be enclosed. I think of Shah Jahan, the Mughal king, who had himself depicted as Jesus Christ and frequently used Christian iconography to cement his rule. I think of Akbar and his ostensibly Hindu queen Maryam Zamani, who bore him sons and was once declared the Mary of the age. Akbar himself was considered the avatar, a reincarnation of Rama. Colonialism had an obsession with enclosures. There were the enclosures of capitalism that took the commons away from most and gave it to a few. Then there were the enclosures where science spent categorizing, segregating, separating biotic and abiotic life and creating objects they could study. There were the colonial enclosures, dividing people into ethnicities and race. And then, of course, there were the enclosures based on that came to be known as nations, a ghettoization along racial and ethnic lines, informed by the ideas and ideologies of vile racists like Woodrow Wilson and Jan Smuts. David Scott once said that the Tamils did not even think of themselves as a minority. I would venture that the Tamils did not even think of themselves as Tamils until they were forced to do so. Some 200 miles away, in a small town just outside Mannar, there is a church with an unusual statue within its compound. It's not to Jesus or Mary, but it is to a man named Mary Bastian. Father Mary Bastian was shot and killed on January 6, 1985 by members of the Sri Lankan army because he dared to raise his voice in defense of the weak, the persecuted, the disappeared. During the course of the Civil War, dozens of priests and nuns died trying to defend their communities and to live true to their vows. The bullet that was aimed at Doraipa wasn't just aimed at an individual. It was also aimed at a certain idea of Sri Lankan society that offended both nationalists and ethnicists on both sides. Doraipa may have represented a truer face of Sri Lanka's lived social fabric than anything that Prabhakaran was actually fighting for.